of surprising how fast this took off, partially because the video goes viral, right? And we're kind of there wasn't really video of the Pacers incident. Anything with video, it's like Draymond punching Poole, right? Oh, that's a bad thing. That's not good. Oh, wow. We saw the video and everybody's suddenly, it's just different, right? Mm-hmm. I think the other part of this, though, internally for them this was a situation that had been building, right? Like there was the incident over the summer that he's being sued with the pickup game and the 17-year-old, the incident at the mall, the Pacer, like there'd been this, and there'd been internal but not just internal conversations like the Grizzlies talking to each other. There had been conversations with Ja about this, but the conversations and the mentoring that they were kind of trying to do didn't work. So they already were kind of thinking we got to come in. And then I think with the video and the way that took off on a Saturday morning, really messing up my ability to just sit there and watch the Premier League. When it took off like that, I don't think they had a choice but to step in. And I still think, I think 2 games was nice, but I think it's going to be fair to say, even Taylor Jenkins was saying this, hinting at this last night, it's going to be more than 2. And it could be a considerable amount of time. They've got 17 games left. Like that's what they've got to get him back and get a little bit of focus before the playoffs. Because you're with me, guys, right? This was supposed to be a deep run for them.
Absolutely.
1,000%.
Kurt, are you surprised that there hasn't been more, I guess, forceful and outright action taken by the NBA front office in this case? I mean, of course, we know investigations are ongoing.
Yeah.
There's a lot that we don't know, but are you surprised? I mean, a lot of people have been making the David Stern comparison with the Gilbert Arenas situation. I mean, 2 very different situations in some respects, but does it surprise you that it sort of felt like it was handed over to the Grizzlies to take care of initially, and then we're waiting kind of to see if that bigger hammer drops, as you mentioned?
I think 2 things here. I think you're right. First off, the situation's different. If this happened in an NBA locker room, it would be different. I think the other difference is just you mentioned the names. David Stern is a little more emotional, a little bit of dictator's a strong word, but maybe not wholly an appropriate style of management, right? He's an old school, my word is law type of manager.
Yeah.
Who would come down hard in these kind of situations. And he also was dealing with a different perception. I mean, right now, in the 80s, there was 70s and 80s in particular, there was fears about the rampant drug use among players and blah, all that. And
different perception. Yeah.
Right. You're very different perception as opposed to the stars now who are like, Steph Curry is as squeaky clean as it gets. Giannis is pretty much as squeaky clean as it gets. Little rougher edges maybe around LeBron, but not like he's never been arrested. He married his guy's whole sweetheart. He's a good dad. He built a school. Like the other part of it is just Silver is not only a consensus builder as a person, but he's a lawyer by both training and just personality and thought. Like he gets his ducks in a row before he moves. He doesn't make rash decisions. So this is, I think this is more a model of that. This is more, he's going to try to coerce what he wants behind the scenes and get everything in a row before the league has to step in.
What do you make it the situation from a Grizzlies perspective? I remember seeing something from Tracy McGrady. He didn't really allude to specifically what was going on in Memphis, but he said something wrong is going on there. And I'm paraphrasing here, but it seemed like the warning signs were definitely happened for a while, and yet we're in a situation still. So is there a lot of responsibility on the Memphis Grizzly organization from even when they drafted Ja Morant? Because I think his talent was fairly apparent. At this point, do you think the Grizzlies can't be trusted to really mentor Ja, just not even from the basketball court, but just his life in general at this point?
Yeah, my dog Ronnie is very concerned about this. He is barking his approval. Yeah, I think so. I think that think there was some treading lightly there, right? This is still your star player. This is your 23-year-old star player who, man, welcome to America. The stars get leeway. And it's funny because people are always like, yeah, in sports, this happens. I'm like, no, man. If you work at the local Toyota dealership and you sell more cars than anybody else on the lot, guess what, man? You get more leeway. Than there's lines you can't cross. But in this case, I think that they are, but I think internally, just again, talking to people there yesterday, and Taylor Jenkins was pretty upfront about this. They see it as a learning opportunity. They see this as a chance to kind of right the ship. Reporting came out today. I think Shams had it that they'd had a team meeting, and Steven had stood up in front and said, and he's traveling with them. He should be back on this. By the way, their slump started. You notice that when he went out? Like, it is not a coincidence that when the guy who did all the dirty work, who set the picks, who got the rebounds, who was kind of the enforcer out there was gone, suddenly they slumped a little. But he stood up in the meeting. He's like, man, we have to be more disciplined. And he is, by the way, if you haven't met him, outside of like just a massive human being, a disciplined guy. Like, he is not frivolous. He's got a great sense of humor, but he's not. He does things with intent. And I think he was trying to get through to them. I think that they see this as the chance to course correct that way. And so they're trying to do it. I think that that's how they're seeing it internally. If we get everybody back on the same page and pulling the rope in the same direction, to use a Spolstra phrase or whatever however you want to define that, then suddenly, yeah, I think that that's what they're seeing here. So I don't think they want to be the disciplinarian in this. In fact, they would probably prefer for the league to be the disciplinarian in this, just because then they don't have to be the bad guy.
Absolutely. Yeah. You don't want to create any sort of sense of bad will or anything like that, especially with your star player. Do you see
sells a lot of tickets, sells a lot of jerseys, man?
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Do you see the Grizzlies? I mean, they've been so measured and methodical about building this team, building like this culture that they have that has been great, barring the past 2 months or so when these things started piling up. Do you see them having like an off season where they do try to make a move to signal to the rest of the league, or the front office, like bringing in a couple of veterans as people have been talking about?
Yeah. And I don't think it's necessarily related to this per se, right? Like, it's more like on the court, where are we short? We have built this team to a certain point where I think, first off, I mean, Ja's great, but you could use more play shot creation. I say that saying the flip side of that is Desmond Bane's just good. Like, Desmond Bane's really good.
Yeah.
And don't we all sleep on him a little bit as a quality number 2? So like,
true.
But in today's NBA, you cannot have enough shot creation. And I think that they're going to go out. They have a Ja's the other part of this, Ja's 5-year extension kicks in next year. Everybody else is going to be following on the heels of that. If they're going to bring guys in, it's kind of now, right? If their owner wants to, they're never going to pay the tax in a Steve Ballmer kind of pay the tax way. But if they're going to be we'll pay the tax because this team contends kind of way, their move is now. Next offseason, go get a couple of pieces to fit into this who are veterans, and let's make a run at this. So I think they were going to do that anyway. Now they may look at this and be especially thoughtful about trying to find the right character guys, the right fit guys, because you need a guy who can fit into that locker room now and come in and keep, I don't say keep everything in line, but a couple of strong veteran voices who are like, hey, let's not lose focus on this, like Steven Adams was trying to do, is helpful. And that's where, hey man, how long did How long did Jared Dudley get to play in the league just being that guy? Like, there's room for those guys in the league.
I want to zoom out a bit and talk about the transfer portal on a major scale. It sounds like from what you're saying that there's potentially a lot of benefit towards maybe mid-major programs, and that's a way for them to compete with those traditional programs in a sense if they're still very focused on like the top freshmen coming in. I mean, I assume they're going to be big in the transfer game as well. But how do you kind of see this playing out so far from the small sample size we have, like across the country and in college basketball at large?
Yeah, I think it's not what people initially expected. I think that everybody kind of thought this was going to be a rich get richer. Duke's going to go pick off every great Mountain West player, and Kentucky's going to go take every great Missouri Valley Conference player. Well, that's not exactly what's happened. If you look at the college basketball landscape, there's a whole lot of blue bloods out there this year that were struggling, that didn't necessarily attack that transfer portal as well as New Mexico did, or as well as maybe some other Mountain West schools did. So I think just like it was before, good coaches, either at the power in basketball, it's power six. So at the power six level in basketball, there's going to be some good coaches there that attack it just right and kind of find the right mix. There's going to be some good coaches at the mid-major level, at the Mountain West level, at those levels that attack it just right. But I don't think it actually adjusts the scales in the advantage of the power six any more than it did before. I just think that the coaches have to figure out the right mix, because there is going to be an interesting mix. And like I mentioned with Donovan Dent, maybe he ends up at UNM anyway in the pre-transfer portal world. But I do think that there are some power conference schools now that they don't want to even mess with freshmen. They don't have the time to let a freshman develop 1 or 2 years. So if you're not getting a top 25 5-star freshman, or maybe a top 50 kind of freshman, there might be some Dukes of the world and Kentuckys that back off those guys and don't even recruit them anymore, because they know they can go get that 4-year player out of, Siena or something like that was just a great player and needs 1 year to show his NBA stock. They know they can go pick off some of those guys. So maybe they don't recruit freshmen anymore. And as a result, you see the Lobos just landed a 4-star shooting guard who did have some high major offers. But he knows he can come here and probably get some minutes pretty quick. And he knows that he can pair up with Donovan Dent and maybe be a backcourt of the future kind of situation. So I think that depending on how you tackle it, I don't think it's going to be an advantage for mid-majors or power conference schools any more than it was prior. So the Lobos right now have hit it right. Now, it doesn't mean they're always going to hit it right, but if you want to compare one other first-year coach a year ago that's now second-year coach in the Mountain West, Kevin Kruger. I like Kevin a lot at UNLV, but he's really attacked the rebuild that he had to do at UNLV with, let's just get a whole bunch of Big 12 conference transfers and these kind of third, fourth, fifth-year guys even, and they're coming in for 1 year, maybe 2 years, and they're out of here already. Whereas Richard Pitino mixed the freshmen in with not only just transfers, but Morris Udeze is the only transfer he's got in that's been a one and done because he exhausted his eligibility. I mean, Jalen House could be a 3-year guy. Jamal Mashburn Jr. could be a 4-year Lobo. And same with Josiah Allen could be a 2-year guy. So, depending on what transfers you target, do you just want that grad transfer who's a one and done? Probably not. But it's going to be interesting to see, because so far, the reason the Lobos are back in a little bit of a relevancy discussion is because they've hit on all 4 of their transfers.
Go ahead, Matt.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I mean, I would think that just the age difference potentially, I mean, that would be fascinating to see a flip between the majors and mid-majors. I wanted to ask you as well, from what you've seen so far across the country and in like this maybe mid-major context, kind of like the Lobos, what have you seen as far as the impact of NIL and how that is playing? Is there any sort of benefit to being like the big fish in the small pond compared to being, I would assume the NIL deals would still be bigger in one of the Power 6 conferences, but is there any sort of advantage or unexpected things you're seeing with NIL so far?
Yes, sort of. To be honest, so far, I think eventually we'll get back to what we thought it might become, which is programs with a ton of money and a ton of boosters are going to be able to get better players, right? But so far, it really hasn't been the case. You can see two programs that have done really good NIL-wise are Boise State and New Mexico. Now, those are kind of – Boise State competes with football, obviously. but they got a couple car dealerships there that are like leasing cars out for their entire college career to players. They got, things going on there that if you're telling me I'm a college player or I'm a college recruit coming from back east or anywhere in the country to Boise, Idaho, but I know I got a pretty good car for 4 years, like that's a big perk right off the bat. You got stuff going on here with the 505 Sports Venture collective in Albuquerque that they're doing pretty good. Look, Donovan Dent's a guy that I think schools are going to come out and covet. He was on a trajectory where I thought, like, for sure people were really going to come at him. He's leveled off a little bit. That maybe that helps his chances of staying. But he also has a really good relationship with UNM, and I think the NIL guys know we got to take care of him. This is how you compete at this level. Whereas I still think eventually the rich get richer in this regard probably will be true. Right now, I'll tell you, Kurt Roth, the guy that runs the collective here, he thinks this is what gives UNM a chance. He knows that UNM in the Mountain West won't be able to compete with a Kentucky budget or a big power conference budget, but basketball needs only a handful of players to be really good, right? So why not throw all your eggs in one basket and get a couple of really good players and show them the love, not just in the pit, but like with a little bit of spending cash, for walking around money, I guess. And some of them get a little more than just walking around money, but they can probably, in their mind, here at a place like New Mexico, maybe they can get that one piece or two piece that puts them over the top.
Do you have concerns about NIL in terms of right now we're still in the embryonic stages? It's kind of like the Wild Wild West at some schools. Are you worried that, these kids may be taken advantage of by these, early stages of NIL, or do you think it'll work itself out eventually?
Yes and no. Like I guess my concerns come from the unknown, right? We all kind of have some unknowns about what is going to happen. It seems dirty. It seems shady. It seems like somebody's about to be in trouble for something. But the reality is that I think it's all open right now. It's out there more than it's ever been. And I've always fallen on the side of I cover a sport where I see a lot of rich older guys, frankly, a lot of rich old white guys in this industry have made money off of this sport for a long time. Not a lot of females, not a lot of people of color, and not a lot of the young people who are actually playing the sports. There's been millions made off of this sport for a long time, and you can't tell me all over and over and over again, but they get a free education. Well, okay, I get they get a free education, but we're talking millions. There's a reason CBS Sports has a multi-billion dollar contract to run just the tournament, just the NCAA tournament, which is about 2.5 weeks, 3 weeks every March, right? So there's money to be had, and I kind of was around it long enough where I was getting frustrated watching these side companies, marketing companies, and all these side ventures get a lot of six-figure employees and a lot of maybe even beyond six-figure employees that are running these businesses, and they're all doing it for the student athletes. I am right now of the opinion I'm happy that the players are getting something out of it. I hope it doesn't get out of control where it just sort of ruins recruiting in terms of violations and things like that. I am concerned a little bit that it is, in some cases, a lot of money for young athletes that probably don't have any experience with that kind of money. So to make sure that they got their taxes taken care of, that they're not running into any of those kind of problems. But man, I turned the corner several years ago, just seeing a lot of people get rich off of college basketball, since that's my primary beat, but this applies obviously even more so to college football. I just saw a lot of people getting rich off of this sport, and I'm okay with the fact that right now the players are getting some of it, and it may kind of hurt some of us fans sometimes, right? It may not be what's best for our team. It may hurt our teams, that kind of stuff. But in the end, if the players are finally getting a little piece of the pie, I'm okay with that. And that's not to say all the people getting rich off the sport were bad people. It's just the structure was inherently built in a way that the people actually that we all come to write about, to cover, to cheer for, they were the only ones not really getting a piece of it. Now they are. So, yeah, I'm worried, but I'm also okay with that worry because I think it comes with the caveat that the right thing ultimately is what's going on right now.
Geoff, from the opinions you're seeing, not necessarily in NIL, although we can go there too, but thinking along the lines of the transfer portal and potentially just how chaotic that could be at any time, for someone to be jumping ship to a different team. Do you see any sort of like reasonable outrage out there or pushback that could lead to changes in those rules, or do you see that staying like pretty fixed for the next couple years?
I think the biggest change is already starting to happen, where they have to let the schools be more involved in it. Initially, they were saying we don't want the schools involved. They can't be involved at all. But then they realized, well, that doesn't make sense. How would a collective in Albuquerque, New Mexico, know which recruit to offer how much money to, or how would he even get connected with that recruit unless he was acting in some way as a booster? So the schools can now coordinate some of it. They can't write the check. They can't spell out the dollar amount, but there needs to be some involvement with the school. Now, the worry there is then once the schools are back involved, the reason they didn't want them involved initially was because then the schools can get in trouble if there's some tampering and cheating going on.
Exactly.
You need to have a certain level of that. So that's kind of, we went from it's not allowed. Okay, now NIL is allowed, but schools can't be involved. So then we kind of jump down to here. Now we're inching back up to where the school involvement does then kind of put them at risk a little bit. And that's okay. I think the schools have to be involved to a certain amount. Now we'll see which schools kind of are the ones behind maybe tampering more than they should and stuff like that. But look, it is going on. I'm well aware of a few cases already where handlers and parents have been reached out to and said, hey, I think this NIL deal at this other school would be pretty good. Some of that stuff's already going on, but guess what? It was actually going on anyway. It was going on before anyway. So I think we're at a spot now where the schools have to be involved at least a little, but I don't know how much.
Yeah, it's so interesting. It's like a new cycle that's sort of regenerating in terms of these levels of involvement. And my mind goes to, of course, just through the era of sports that the three of us have watched, seeing all the violations in the past, that there's always teams like, that old saying goes, if you're not cheating, you're not trying, so to speak. And none of us are naive to that. So I do wonder, with more transparency, which I totally agree, I like the transparency, but I just wonder then, like, what is the cutting edge? What is that looking like now as well?
And I'm curious what the transparency is going to be like. I've heard rumblings of how much even some of the Lobo players are getting paid. I've also been told those numbers are way out of whack, that those aren't the numbers. So they don't have to disclose what their numbers are. If you're a state employee, you do. If you're not an employee, which the NCAA is still very adamant about, they don't have to disclose what they're getting paid in these deals. So it's an interesting kind of this balancing act where, again, state schools can get involved with these financial dealings, but don't have to disclose the terms. That's when you start getting into that whole murky area that UNM and a lot of other schools over the past decade have kind of been, bordering on getting in trouble with when they have these deals that they don't want to be transparent about. I am a little afraid that that's going to then get into the realm of the players. Not all that interested in covering those, but I do think some of that's going to come up. If a school helps player A get $100,000 NIL deal, but we find out that $100,000 NIL deal was being funded by, some partner of the school or whatever. Like, these are all weird scenarios that could play out. Well, then what school involvement is, what level of transparency should the school have had with their partnership with this other entity? And those are the things that probably in the next 24 months are really going to start hitting courts and hitting the news cycle.
Now, it's a really interesting subject, but at least the athletes are getting something. It's a start. It's on the road to, at least I hope, the colleges paying the players as well, both. But
at least I'll throw this in real quick too. I've covered enough Lobo players where I don't think they're hurting necessarily. Like, UNM takes care of its players as best as they always could. When there was stipend that was approved and they started getting it, they feed them well, they do all that kind of stuff. But man, there's 363 Division I programs. There are some schools at some pretty poor places that are, hoping to get McDonald's after a game and stuff like that. The money's not at all the programs. So I'm glad that some of these guys can go to a movie on the weekend and stuff like that, because it sounds silly and some people roll their eyes at it. There's a lot of that going on at the Division I basketball level where players weren't, going to the movies on the weekends because they really didn't have that level of money.
Duke is Is it something, being like a basketball influencer, however you want to term it, is that something that dawned on you like in your late teens that this was something that could be a career option, or when did that kind of all click?
I never would have thought this. Like, it was during the pandemic. I was working. I was a manager at Pepsi, and I was pretty comfortable. I was making good money, so I'm comfortable. I would hoop, from time to time, like do like men's leagues, tournaments. And I heard like a buddy of mine called me and was like, "Yay, man, Ball is Life. They got some guys coming out to the park." And at the time, it wasn't no squads or nothing. It was Friga, Nick Briz, Zach, Austin, Slim, and a couple others. But it wasn't a team at the time. Oh yeah, Jordan Sutherland. And they just go, they'll do a little dunk show and then they'll play. So I had every excuse in the book. I'm like, man, it was in Clearmont, Florida. I'm like, bro, that's like 30, 40 minutes from me. I got to work tonight, blah, 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 making excuses. And my boy, he was like, just pull up. So, I went, I'm, like I said, I'm a hooper. So I went, to go out there and compete. We ended up getting on the very last game, like the very last game. And we went out there and it's like, crowd was just, I was amazed. I'm like, why are these people here? Like, it's just regular people just hooping. I seen the cameras there, but I'm not thinking it's a big deal. Like, maybe they just recording for whatever they want to record for. And I went out there and it's like the first time I touched the ball, I went and I dunked it, and just the crowd went crazy. And I was like, I still didn't think it was nothing up until like right after, like, at the end. Austin came up to me like immediately when the game was over, and he came up like, "Bro, I need your number," and we exchanged information. And then from that point, one of the guys that were over us at the time, he had wrote me off Ball's Life, was like, "Hey man, you want to do a part takeover with us?" I'm like, cool. I'm still not thinking it's nothing. I'm just like, okay, yeah, that's pretty dope. I get my highlights and stuff like that, and I can post them. I wasn't big on social media. I had like maybe 1,000 followers at that time, and one thing led to another. We're doing takeovers, and before you know it, you got big guys like Cash Nasty and Marcellus Howard doing reactions, and that's when I started learning about reactions, what it could do. And then we started. It was around Florida a lot, just doing takeovers, and we were just getting millions of views. I'm like, it's dope, it's cool. And while all this is going on, I'm still working. And Austin, he was like, yeah, man, I think one day we're gonna get paid from this. So my lady at home, I went to her and I was like, yeah, one of these days, I'll be able to quit and I'll just be going to parks playing basketball and getting paid. And she was like, what? I was like, yeah, I don't know either, but I got a good feeling about this. And probably like another month went by, and then like out of nowhere, they just had asked for my account information. And then like that following month, I got like a nice paycheck, and I'm like, hold up, this is from playing at the park. And I'm like, maybe it's a fluke. I'm going to continue to work. It could be a fluke. Second month, it was even bigger. I'm like, all right, they got one more month. Got one more month, and then I got to see him at the job no more. Third month, boom, it was solidified. I'm like, yep, I'm out of here. I left. I didn't say a word to nobody. I clocked out and I was gone. And then that right there, like, that drove me to obviously want to become a better entertainer. Like I said, you can be an outstanding athlete, but if you're not entertaining, people are not going to want to watch you. So that's another key thing about this realm. You don't have to be the best player. You don't have to be the fastest. You don't have to jump the highest. As long as you're entertaining, you bring some type of entertainment value, people are going to latch on to you. And I learned that early on. I just, kept doing, and then just one thing led to another, and boom, now we got a team. And we started like the street ball realm, like of teams in general. And then it was like a team from here, a team from here, a team from there. This person got a team, and it just a whole wave just hit, and just one thing led to another. Like I literally went from working, and like 6 months later, I played in the crew league with YK. I got reached out. YK Osiris reached out to me. Played in the crew league, like played against Chris Brown and stuff like that. Connected with him, got linked in with him, and then before you know it, like I had a role in White Man Can't Jump, the remake, and it comes out this summer. So I'm very excited. Like I'm definitely excited. It comes out this summer. they should like start like putting the previews out like during March Madness, I believe. So it's gonna be crazy.
Well, you brought that up. Let's talk about it because I've seen some interviews. I believe Jack Harlow's in it. I've heard just some rumblings. What was that experience like? And from what I've done some homework, correct me if I'm wrong, I think this is going to be a little different of a plot. Without spoiling it, can you kind of give I guess, a little quick preview of what viewers can expect from that movie? Because that's a classic from Matt and I from the 90s. I mean, we watch that all the time.
Yeah.
So how is bringing kind of that story into 2023? What was that process like? What was that process for you being on set?
I feel like it's going to be more modern, so people is going to be able to relate more. Like a lot of the stuff nowadays is social media, it's the internet. So like it's obviously going to be more up to date, but like with issues and playing styles and stuff like that is going to be more modern. So I feel like people is going to connect with it, and then just also with it being a classic, the people that's like a part of the cast, like I think it's going to be great. And then it was directed by Cal Maddock, who he just directed The House Party, and that's dope. So I expect nonetheless that this is going to be great. Definitely life changing. Just being right next to Jack Harlow. And he just like, he treats you like you're, like just like a regular person. Like he's not, all the extra stuff. He's just like, he's a cool, genuine person. Just being like around him and like Tiana Taylor and Senqua Walls and just. At first, I was mind blown. Like it didn't really hit me until like I got back home and I'm like, dang, I'm about to be in a movie. And just the story behind that, I got reached out to like 6 months prior by Harper. This lady named Harper. She reached out to me. It's like, this movie is finna come up. We're doing a reboot of The White Man Can't Jump. Not saying you'll have a role in anything, but would you want to be a part of it? I'm like, of course. Why not? So originally I was supposed to be in the back, like a background, like a somebody, you may get seen, you may not. So the crazy part about it, it was they were looking for local talent. So I live in Florida. It was filmed in LA. So I traveled on my own dime, got like my hotel on my own dime, Ubers, all that stuff, because like I said, it's supposed to be a local hire. I'm like, every day you don't get an opportunity like this. So I get there, I'm changing. I know a lot of the other guys that were in the cast, like being background. So, we just chilling and talking and stuff. And so we got on all like our jerseys and everything like that, uniforms, and like four pretty important people came up to me, and I'm just looking. They were like, can we take a couple pictures of you? I'm like, yeah. So they took the pictures, boom, boom. I go sit back down. I'm talking to a friend of mine, and then they come back up and was like, this is in front of everybody. They're like, yeah, we need you to take off everything and go put it back in the wardrobe and come with us. And I'm just looking like, no, did I do something wrong? Like, I didn't do nothing. I sat here the whole time. I didn't do anything wrong. And so everybody's just looking. They're like looking like, dang, what did he do? I'm hearing in the background people like, dang, what did he do? And so we're walking towards the set at the time. I didn't know it, but we're walking towards Venice, towards the set. And she was like, yeah, we're upgrading you. And I'm like, okay, like what do that mean? Like you're gonna have like an actual role? And I'm like, what?
Wow.
Like, I don't know what happened on the back end. I don't know like the person they had prior or something. I don't know and I don't care. But it was like, yeah, we're upgrading you. So like, and it was cold in California at the time. So we were standing out there in the cold, like the camp where everybody be at it's cold. So they walked me over to where I had like my own like dressing room and all that stuff like that. Like I had my own like everything and the AC and the heat on and stuff like that. And my daughter was trying to get in here, but
all good.
Yeah. So the first person I seen was Tiana Taylor. I'm like, what? And then the person who I co-starred with, his name is Zach Steiner. He played in Euphoria. He played in a lot of other like big things. And he came, he introduced himself. He was talking to me and stuff like this. Like everybody welcomed me in like with open arms. So like obviously, you're gonna be nervous, but I felt like at home because everybody was just like so genuine, nice. Like even down to the director who was Cal Maddock. He came up to me. And he's like, bro, I'm such a big fan. Like I'll be watching your videos. And I'm like, what? You're a fan of me now? That's crazy. And we got on set. I was there for 2 days. Like we're on set like 15 hours each day. I respect all actors. It's definitely a grind. It's not like you just pop up, say a couple lines and go home. Like you do each take probably like 10 times each take. So I can't spoil it, but it's definitely entertaining. I know the viewers are gonna like it. And that was just a blessing. And that just opened up, pretty much like my acting career. Then like right after that, I was connected with a producer from 2K, and I started doing some mocap acting for 2K. I'm like, I feel like everything comes in full circle. Like everything happens for a reason.